Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the replay. I am thrilled that you've decided to join me for this replay of the 5 steps to stick with it while clearing Candida. And I'm going to jump right in. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ricky Heller. I think most of you have probably seen me before, actually, because you're on my page. But I'm Ricky Heller from rickyheller.com, and I help people on restricted diets learn to love their food so they can focus on healing and go on to live their best lives. And today I'm going to talk to you about exactly how to do that. So this is a replay of a webinar that I gave live, and I am going to share exactly the same information with you because my goal is for you to be able to live a life free of the worry around Candida symptoms and all of the stressing over the food and what are you going to eat and whether you can take your supplements and whether your symptoms are going to flare up and all of that, because I have been there. I know what it's like, and I don't want you to ever have to go through that for a second longer than is necessary. So it can be done. That's if you take nothing else away from my presentation today, it is that it can be done. You can get better and you can live a life that is so much better than you ever imagined, where you are no longer a prisoner of your Candida symptoms. So let me hop right in. I'm going to actually share my screen so that I can show you my presentation, and please feel free to always ask questions, leave comments, and I will come back and I will answer those. So here we go. I'm going to head up to the beginning of the presentation and just get started right away. So 5 steps to stick with it while clearing Candida so you can love your food, reclaim your life, and never slip up again, because we all know it's that pattern of slipping back and forth between being on the diet and not being on the diet. That's what really causes so much of the problems in our lives. So I do want to start by telling you a little bit about me. I have followed a strict Candida diet and have lived a happy and productive, what I call anti-Candida lifestyle for 20 years now, with no cheating, except for a little relapse in the middle. And that is really what got me on the path that I'm on today, because it taught me so much about what I needed to do to stick with it and be healthy and have the life that I really wanted to have. I'm a registered holistic nutritionist, and I'm a Candida coach who has worked with hundreds of clients. I'm also a 3-time best-selling author, including the book Living Candida Free, which is all about my story, and it's a guidebook with recipes, and also my first self-published book, which was Sweet Freedom, and that was recommended by Ellen DeGeneres. That's a whole other story. Magazine editor over the years and freelance writer. I've also been interviewed as an expert on Candida for national TV, both in the States and Canada, various radio stations, podcasts, magazines, and so on. And more importantly, after all these years of living this way myself, I became obsessed with finding out what is out there, what works, so that I can help you have the life you deserve, which is free of Candida. And don't let anyone ever tell you that you just have to be stuck with this and that things won't get better, or that you have to continue to use creams for the rest of your life just to maintain a level where life is tolerable, instead of where life is actually wonderful, exciting, and full of all the things that you want, because it absolutely can happen. If you know anything about my story, you know that I had an extremely severe case of Candida, and I got to where I am today. So more importantly, as I said, I became obsessed with finding out what's out there, and also living a life beyond what I ever imagined it could be like once my Candida cleared. Because when you're in the midst of it, and I remember all too well what that's like, you are obsessed with your symptoms. You're obsessed with how you feel. All you can think about is, when am I going to get better? What can I do? If I eat this, will it make me better? If I stop eating this, will it make me better? Maybe this supplement will work. Maybe that supplement will work. Maybe that doctor will help. Maybe that other doctor will help. And what happens is you end up in this tornado of, all you can think about is symptoms and illness, and it's focusing on what's wrong instead of what can become right. And when you get out of that cycle, when you do manage to stick with it long enough that your body begins to heal, everything can start to change and life opens up for you. You end up having all of the experiences that you thought you were missing to begin with. You can go back to spending time with your family. You can go, you hear my dog in the background there? This is a live recording. You can go back to spending time with your family. You can go back to doing all those things that you miss, and life becomes good again. And you're not constantly thinking about what's wrong with you. So this is me at the worst point in my life. And I always cringe when I see this picture, but that was me at my highest weight right before I had a major, major relapse in my Candida. So I was diagnosed with Candida and I did everything I was supposed to do. I felt fabulous for about 10 years. And then I was feeling so good that I thought I could just have some Christmas treats one year in 2008. And this is what happened. Within about 3 months, I was eating my Betty Crocker frosting out of the can again, eating full-size family chocolate bars as a snack. I mean, I was on a bender. I literally couldn't stop eating all the sugar, all the refined flour, all of the junk food, all the processed food. And not only was I at my highest weight and felt like crap, I had horrible Candida symptoms at this time. So I was dealing with a huge rash on my chest that nothing seemed to get rid of. I had recurrent sinus infections. I had foggy thinking. I had sugar cravings you cannot imagine. Basically, any Candida symptom, I have had it. I had oral thrush. I had athlete's foot. I said foggy thinking, memory lapses, basically all of it. And this was when I decided that I had to do something. So I finally found a good doctor, and it took about 6 months for me to see results. But I want to show you where I am today. So that's me on the left with my dog, Chaser. We love our dog so much. And I had to put in a picture of Zoe, our new little puppy, because she would be jealous if she wasn't on screen. As you can see, she's somebody who loves the limelight. So these are my pups, and I live with my husband just north of Toronto. And like I said, now I literally couldn't have imagined that my life could be as good as it is today. It's beyond what I imagined as a good life, because I was able to quit my job of 27 years, start a full-time career as a Candida coach, and helping people to move through that same transition that I did, where their symptoms are resolved, their health is great, they have energy again, they get out of bed excited, and I'm doing the things I love to do in life. And I know it can happen for you too. So here's what we'll cover today. We're going to talk about my 5-step process that over the years I developed, that allows you to move from being at the mercy of your food and supplements, I'm going to say, to being in control and feeling free around food, so that you don't have to worry about slip-ups. How to release the self-blame and negativity that can be felt around your past failures on this diet, no matter how many times you've slipped up in the past. Why we're actually set up to fail when it comes to what we eat, and how to override that. How not worrying about binge behaviors can actually help reduce your cravings over time. What you must do that will decrease the power of food so that food is no longer such a temptation in your life. And the key shift you must make that leads to success on the program and allows you to heal and be able to stick with it for the long term. So why is this different? Because I'm sure you've seen lots of trainings and classes and webinars. And I just want to tell you to begin with, as you can see, obviously I'm a living, breathing person, but I also have been dealing with chronic Candida. So I'm not just some doctor sitting in a tower who is not connected to what's going on with the person who's actually suffering with the Candida. I know exactly what it's like. I've been in your shoes, and I'm still there on the road. I'm also not going to tell you to give up desserts and sweets. Over the years, through my own experience and working with so many clients, I have actually come to believe that that's a huge mistake when we tell people you got to cut out everything that they love. And I'll talk to you about how you can do that in a healthy way. No deprivation here. We are not meant to be deprived. And this approach is what I did and what my clients do in order to live a free and happy life without being plagued by Candida. So as you continue, your symptoms will resolve. In most cases, that's what happens. Obviously, I can't guarantee, but you will move along the path of healing. And as you heal, not only will your symptoms resolve, but you will have a different relationship with food that allows you to then move forward without worrying about those slip ups. So let's dive in. Step one. Before we do anything else, what we need to do is eliminate the blame on ourselves. And what do I mean by that? Well, for so many of us, when we're stuck in this cycle, it can seem like a huge mystery and like you have no control over the process. You go about your day and you're on your Candida diet and you're following it religiously, and then suddenly something happens. You have a stressful situation at work, or you have an argument with your spouse or your kids, or something happens where you just don't feel 100%, and boom, you're off the diet, you're eating something that you know you shouldn't be eating, and your health is affected. And it sometimes just feels like we are moved by these external forces that have more control over us than we do. And there's a reason for that. I'm going to talk about that. But I want you to know that you can gain control over your eating and your health if you know how to access that control. And that is one of the steps that I'm going to show you today. So it's really important that you don't punish yourself twice, because we begin by feeling unhappy about the fact that we're on this diet. We feel deprived. And in a way, that's a kind of punishment. Excuse me. That's a kind of punishment of ourselves. So when we slip, then we feel bad again because, oh, I'm so weak. I have no willpower, and all those things that we tell ourselves that aren't true. And it makes us feel punished by ourselves for the second time. So I just want you to know that feeling bad about this cycle is optional, because it isn't your fault that this is happening. And I'm going to tell you why not. And if you think about it, this type of cycle is so true in so many situations where food is involved. You know, in our society, there are, I'm going to say, thousands or even millions of people who are trying to be healthy. They know what they should be eating, they know what they should be doing, and yet somehow they are often slipping off the wagon. So many people who go on a special diet for health reasons find it almost impossible to stick with it. And there's a reason why that's happening. So that brings me to step two, which is understanding the true reasons why this cycle is occurring. The first thing you need to know is that food is actually designed to be addictive. There are food scientists whose full-time job it is to sit in big office buildings that are kind of like chemistry labs, where they look at the food and they try to design food that is going to have the perfect ratio of sugar, fat, and salt so that it will be irresistible to you. And they look at things like the color, the shape, the size, all of that. And they literally are designing foods. And I'm talking about processed foods. Like if you go pick an apple off a tree or pull a carrot out of the ground, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about processed foods and sort of the bulk foods that we buy in stores and so on. And part of what's happening here is that that food is triggering the same part of the brain that is the addiction center, where things like cocaine and heroin trigger your brain. And so there's a brain chemical called dopamine, and when dopamine is triggered and dopamine is created, what that does is it draws us back to an event that generated the dopamine in the first place. So when you take cocaine or when you eat sugar, dopamine is generated. And what that does is it causes you to then want to seek out more of that same experience. And experiments have actually shown with lab rats. In the lab, the rats will choose, if they have two spouts, they'll choose the sugar before the heroin. They'll choose the sugar before the cocaine, because sugar is even more addictive. Anybody who tells you sugar isn't a drug, they're not talking about true addiction, in my opinion. So food, the way it's designed, is so addictive that there's a physical component that we don't have any conscious control over, and that is pushing us to go back again and again and again to those foods and makes them irresistible. Also, I think on a much more basic level, from the moment we're born, food naturally provides comfort to us. And that's what is going on in our psychology. So the first one is physical, but this one is psychological and emotional. And I think in some ways that can even be a stronger compulsion. So if you think about it, the minute we're born, if you are breastfed, breast milk is very sweet. It's much sweeter than regular milk. And there's this environment of, as a baby, we are being held, cuddled, soothed by our mother while we're being fed mother's milk. And those two components become tied up for the rest of our lives in our emotional makeup. That when we want soothing, when we want comfort, we seek out food. And I think as we get older, it expands more and more and more. So, as somebody who is an emotional eater myself, and by that I just mean somebody who uses food as a way to deal with emotions. If I'm upset, if I'm depressed, if I'm bored, if I'm angry, even if I'm happy, if it's an emotion, I'm going to want food. And for so many of us, that's what happens. That's why there's a cliche about, the couple breaks up and the woman goes home and eats ice cream out of the tub, because those two things are tied together in our minds from the moments we are first fed by our mothers. And that only continues as we continue to get older. I also think if you live in Western society, but particularly in North America, food's role is so exaggerated in our culture that we now feel we have to have food to accompany anything that we do, pretty much. Even to the point where, many people will store food in their cars because whatever you're doing, wherever you go, you got to have food. But this all goes back to the concept of food as a ritual. So if you think back to the olden days, like when my dad was a little kid, if somebody had a wedding, they wanted to create this huge banquet, this huge feast, because that was a way of showing the neighbors and showing the family how well off they were, because they could afford to have this huge feast when most people didn't have that much food all the time. But here in our modern society, where we're surrounded by food all the time, that has now grown into a ritual for any event. Like I said, you have an anniversary, you have a birthday, you have a graduation, you have a funeral, even negative events. Food, 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 food. And so every time we socialize, we think we have to eat food. And that becomes a habit that's hard to break as well. So the result of all this is both physical and psychological habits. And so the physical is that whole addictive process that I was talking about. But I think in so many ways, sometimes the psychological ties are even harder to break because they're so strong. If you have a feeling about something and you're eating emotionally, to break that, you really need to know what's going on and exactly how you can sever that tie. So food serves many, many purposes in our lives. And I think what ends up happening is it becomes part of our actual identity and our emotional makeup. So we tend to rely on it that way. And when we are asked to change our diet, it actually feels like you're asking me to be a different person, right? Like if you remember, if you've been on the Candida diet before, for so many of us, my clients, and I've heard from so many of you that it doesn't feel natural. It feels weird to have to cut out all these foods that I love because it's so deeply ingrained in our actual core identity. And what I want to tell you is, as you change and grow and heal, your identity can change too, and the foods that you associate with can change too. You're not the same person you were when you're 5, and you're not going to be the same person you are 5 or 10 years from now. So once we understand that, what's the first step? Is to replace foods with ACD-friendly alternatives. And ACD just stands for anti-Candida diet friendly alternatives. So first, I think it's important to know that when we eat emotionally, for so many people on an anti-Candida diet, the reason we're dealing with Candida is because we are emotional eaters. Like I said, for me, from the time I was a little kid, sweets held this special value for me, and anything that I needed in terms of an emotional boost or comfort or soothing, it was sweets. And so what happens is, for so many people with Candida, either it's the sweets or the salty foods or the refined foods or the junk food, which can all contribute to you ending up with an overgrowth of Candida. So emotional eating, that's the first part of the double whammy. It can actually contribute to Candida in the first place. But I think there's a second and very serious part of this double whammy, which is if someone else is an emotional eater and they overdo it, or they break, maybe someone's just trying to lose weight and they break their diet, there are repercussions, but they're not the same as for someone with Candida. So If my husband, for example, and I love using this example because my husband would never be an emotional eater, he just doesn't do that. But let's just pretend he ate half a pan of brownies one night just because he was upset about an argument we had, instead of me eating the half a pan of brownies. And the next morning, what would happen? Well, as someone who's generally healthy and doesn't have this issue, he might feel a little full. He might say, oh man, I shouldn't have done that. But that's about it. Whereas for someone with Candida, if you go off and break your Candida diet with those regular brownies or the Pringles or the ice cream or the pizza or the wine or whatever it is that you're using as an emotional crutch, then you're going to have the repercussion of symptoms flaring up. So this food is harming you in two ways. You're not learning to deal with emotional eating. You're not learning to move away from food as a source of emotional eating. And you're also contributing to your negative health consequences through Candida, because Candida is going to love that food and it's going to flare. And then you're going to end up with a longer term problem that's going to be harder for you to clear. So it's so imperative for those of us with Candida to not eat emotionally and break the diet with foods that are not healthy for us. So what can you do? Well, I think the benefits of finding anti-Candida friendly alternatives are that you're not feeding the Candida that way. So as an example, when I first started this diet, um, I was looking for foods to feed my emotions, because let's face it, when you first begin, you have the burden of changing your whole diet. You have to learn how to eat differently. You have to learn how to buy new foods and stick with it. And that takes effort. And then if you put emotional eating on top of that, where you suddenly tell yourself, I have to stop this emotional eating, I can never break this diet, well, then you're putting a double burden on yourself as well. And that's really, really difficult. So my approach, and at the time I wasn't even aware I was doing this, but looking back, this is what I did, and this is what has worked so well with so many of my clients. We say it's enough. It's enough of a learning curve in the beginning to deal with the new diet. Let's put that in place. And yes, we understand and we acknowledge that emotional eating is not healthy for the long term, but let's give yourself a little bit of leeway so that you have some time and space to work on it. And we're going to do that by giving you these ACD friendly alternatives. And so I have devoted a large amount of time to creating recipes for just this reason. And my clients have actually told me that this is one of the reasons they've been able to be so successful. So in my case, as I said, when I first started many, many years ago, there were no anti-Candida friendly brownies or anti-Candida friendly chocolate or anything like that. What I had to do was just put some stevia, which is an herbal sweetener, into some almond butter and mix it up and eat it. And that was my way of trying to have a little bit of sweetness. But it allowed me to not break the diet. It allowed me to stick with it. And some days I ate like half a jar of almond butter. Is that healthy? Not in the long term. But what I told myself was, as long as I don't eat something that is outside the boundaries of this diet, I am not feeding the Candida. I am allowing my body to heal. And that worked, because over time that changed. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. But if you have something that you can use to replace the food that you're normally using for your emotional eating, and it can't just be any food, right? So, as an example, I mean, I'm sure if you're on Instagram, you've seen this too, and Pinterest as well, I guess. You see these photos of brownies that say sugar free, grain free, egg free, dairy free, blah, everything free. And then I've made some of those recipes, and I got to tell you, if you have a 3-ingredient brownie that's free, free, free of everything, it's not going to taste very good. So if I'm in the middle of a crisis and I want something to eat really badly and I eat that brownie, well, that's not going to do it for me. So what you want are Candida diet friendly foods that taste exactly like the ones you're craving. And that's how you can alleviate the craving and bypass the cheating, so to speak. So if you take an anti-Candida diet friendly food as your interim food, then you're not going to be feeding your Candida. Your body is still going to be working towards full healing. And at the same time, you give yourself a little bit of time and a bridge between the start and the finish, where you're working on that emotional eating. And so that's exactly what I mean by bridge the gap from the old to the new foods. And it gives you time, it gives you space to work on that emotional eating without breaking the diet, without having that relapse of symptoms, without being thrown back to a level you were at before. So I want to share with you how this worked for Georgina. Georgina is one of my clients who I just adore, and I've been working with Georgina for a while, so I know quite a bit about her story. So Georgina started out with working with me many years ago, and she had been, as in her own words, she says she tried every diet out there. I can totally relate to that because that's exactly where I was when I first started the Candida diet too. And none of them seemed to work, or they would work for just a short time, and then she would fall off and she would start eating again. She also talked about food cravings and being able to eat to the point of being sick. Again, I totally relate to that. I can remember many a time where I was just binging on food and I knew it was time to stop, and something compelled me and I just couldn't stop eating. So this is actually a photo of Georgina about a year after she finished the Reclaim program with me and a group of people. And she had been working out for quite some time, and I'll talk about how that happened. And you can just see the joy on her face, how happy she is. She's feeling great, and it's amazing how things have changed for her. So, as I said, she had a history of dieting and failing at it. She made full use of the recipes in the program and the anti-candida diet-friendly foods, and that allowed the transition to be smooth and move from vending machines to homemade goodies. So here's the story of what happened with Georgina in the beginning. Right when we started the Reclaim program, it was maybe like a couple of weeks in, or maybe a month in, and she was having a really bad day. She was really stressed out, and she was craving a sweet, or I think she said in particular that day she was craving poutine, which is in Quebec, it's a dish that people love, which is French fries covered in gravy and cheese curds. And so she was ready to break the diet. And she posted in our private Facebook group about this, that she was having this struggle. And it's such a supportive group. People chimed in. And as it turned out, I happened to be on social media at that moment. So I saw her message. And so I popped in and did a little video and talked about what I thought was going on and just some things for her to think about. And luckily, that sort of did it for Georgina. So she ended up going home without buying any of those things, and she made herself a little Candida diet friendly treat, which hit the spot and prevented her from cheating on the diet. And that was kind of like a turning point for her. After that, she was like a house on fire. And one of the things that happened was, in addition to sticking with her program, she ended up starting an exercise regimen. And again, that was one of the things that her whole life she had tried and failed, tried and failed, tried and failed. This time she was in the correct mindset for it to stick, and so she continued along with that. And so this is what happened by the end of our program. This is 6 months. It's a 6 month program. And this is at the end. We're talking about some of the goals we posted in the beginning. And Georgina said, "Thanks for sharing this, Ricky Heller. Definitely great goals. And I think that I achieved all of them in some manner over the past 6 months, and will be able to take this knowledge and solidify them over the next part of my journey. Thank you for everything that you put into this program. It was definitely life changing for me." And boy, was it ever life changing for Georgina. Like I said, that was the end of the program. That was about 6 months ago. She has continued to stick with it and do all the things to improve her health. And she's lost weight. And here is where Georgina is today. Her body fat is now down to 21.7%. Now, you guys, I actually had to look that up because I didn't really know what that meant. Professional athletes are at that level of body fat. She wore shorts for the first time in 15 years, and she is loving the way she feels. So I could not be happier. And I think one of the key turning points was in that switch in the way she approached food and what she used for food, for using the anti-candida diet friendly foods instead of the old trigger foods, and changing her entire way of thinking around food. So this is just recently, Georgina posted on her Facebook page, and someone complimented her on what was going on in her life. And she said, "It has been a long journey, and really all started with the Reclaim program. Thank you, Ricky Heller. The mind shift started there and has just continued. I am ecstatic over the results that I've seen to date and can't wait to see what happens next." So I am totally thrilled for her. I cannot wait to see what happens next either. So part of that journey is making that switch in the food. And then I think what happens next is step 4, which is shifting your relationship with food further. So moving away from the standard foods for emotional support to anti-candida diet friendly foods. But what you're going to find happens is as your body heals and your symptoms begin to resolve, because that will happen if you stick with the program and continue to eat the foods that are supporting your best health, you will get better. Your body will get better. So as this happens, the way you think about food and what it is for begins to change, because you're no longer going to need food as an emotional support when your emotions are so much better overall and you're feeling physically so much better. So I mentioned what happened with me with the almond butter. In the beginning, I was eating half a jar of almond butter as an emotional support because I wanted it. I was craving foods for emotional reasons. But what happened was I didn't realize that when you stick with the diet and that's feeding your body what it needs on the physical level, you stop having those addictive responses and you stop having all of those spikes and peaks and valleys in your blood sugar levels. And then that physical urge to eat is no longer there. So for me, in the beginning, it was more what was going on in my head. But as I started feeling better, your body doesn't want half a jar of almond butter at one sitting. And so I began to feel like, this is just too much. Like it was just a natural outgrowth of eating food that is healthy over time. And it changes your body chemistry. It also changes your mind chemistry. And this was something that came as a huge surprise to me, that I'm someone who has had depression. I was first diagnosed with depression when I was 13 years old. And I've had chronic depression throughout my life, as well as I'm going to say chronic and severe anxiety attacks. In my 20s, I had recurrent panic attacks. I was going to the emergency room 4 or 5 times a week because I thought I was having heart attacks. And I just thought this was something that I had to get a grip on and learn to live with. And because I was opposed to medication. My dad is very old fashioned, and that was ingrained in our head that you never take drugs unless it's absolutely like life threatening. So for whatever reason, I just never was on any medications for depression or anxiety. And even though I had lots of friends for whom it worked really well, anyway, I wasn't on medications. And so when I changed my diet and I stuck with it for the first time, it's about a year later, I remember thinking, oh my God, I don't remember the last time I was depressed. And so the depression just naturally lifted without, and I know it was the food because I wasn't on any kinds of medication. And the anxiety was lifted by about 95%. And the reason this happens to so many people with candida is because the toxins that are given off by the candida in the gut actually interfere with the brain chemicals. There's a direct connection in our bodies between our gut and our brain. So what goes on in the gut actually affects your brain chemistry too. And I didn't know this, but like serotonin levels, which are considered the feel good chemical, and when you take antidepressants, it affects the serotonin in your brain. That is affected by the candida toxic output. So many people with candida experience depression and anxiety, and it's actually connected to the excess of candida. And once that candida is cleared up, the depression and anxiety often lift for people. So just being able to stick with it long enough to rebalance the body chemistry was enough for me to get rid of my depression and anxiety. And so your relationship to food completely changes. When you're no longer feeling that emotional pull either, that becomes much easier, and it becomes so much easier to work on that as well. So food ultimately will no longer have the same power over you. And when you're feeling great, your focus begins to shift to other things. You learn how to find comfort outside food. You learn how to find that sense of security that food gives from other sources. And that's something that we actually work on in the Reclaim program, is how do we do that? As you learn that food isn't the most important emotional support, where can you find emotional support elsewhere? And you will be amazed at how food just doesn't have that draw anymore. Now, that's not to say I don't still adore food. I love food and I still love my sweets, but it's not the thing I think of when I'm feeling bad or I'm feeling depressed, or I'm not drawn to food the same way, and I don't have that same compulsion to binge anymore. It's a natural outgrowth of getting healthier. So here's how it worked for Hillary, who is another member of Reclaim. And this was at the end of the program. Again, she said, "Thanks for everything. I've been feeling fantastic. If we're sharing favorites from our time together, mine is hands down when I'm in the kitchen looking for something to eat. Even though I'm not hungry, I can now quickly identify it and I realize it's not food I'm looking for. Then I act accordingly. I hope we can all stay in touch." And so for her, that was the exact switch that happened as well. Once you learn how to work through the emotions effectively, and you also have a healthy relationship with food that is nourishing your body, you'll be able to stop yourself from eating food just as an emotional support. You won't ultimately want it. And step 5, I think, is a crucial step in closing this process, which is to make yourself a priority. That's something we don't learn as women. In our culture, we so often put everybody else's needs ahead of our own needs. And certainly if you're a mom, I'm pretty sure you know what that feels like. I'm not a mom, but I know with all the people in my life how that works. It's part of our cultural teaching. It's just part of who we are as women. And the problem there is that when we're putting other people's needs before our own, that means you're not making your health a priority, and it can so negatively impact your own health. Um, I remember a story of a good friend of mine a couple of years ago, who she was, I don't know if she was exercising or something happened where she injured her knee, and it caused her to limp a little bit. And she thought that she just pulled something. She was, and it would eventually just go away, but it didn't. And this went on for a couple of weeks, and then 3 weeks, and then a month. And I remember asking her, like, "Don't you think you should go to the doctor and check this out?" And, she has a very high powered job. She's very busy. And she said, "Oh, I mean, I know I should go, but I can't seem to find the time. I never have a spare minute. I'm not able to do it." But the funny thing was, during that same period, she was able to go to her kids' school and pick them up when they weren't feeling well and take them to the doctor. Or if her kid had the flu, she was able to go and get medication for them and so on. And this happens all the time, right? Where we make time for others that we feel are important in our lives, but we don't make time for ourselves and don't make ourselves a priority. And ultimately, that is harming everybody. That's harming you and that's harming your family. With my friend, what happened was by the time she finally went to the doctor, it was too late for them to really do much to help her. They said, "We might have been able to operate, but now it's too damaged and we're just going to have to see what we can do." And they tried various things and it got better, but it never completely went back to normal. And so now she's not able to do other things with her family that maybe she could have done before. So it isn't being selfish to make yourself and your health a priority. It's actually creating a stronger, better you that will then be better able to interact with and take care of the others in your life as well. When you learn to care about yourself as much as you care about the other people in your life, everybody's going to benefit. And I think, again, for women, this is something that is so hard for us to realize, but it's so important, I think, for you to understand that you are worth it. Your health is worth it. The rest of your life is worth it to take that time into and put it into your health. You deserve to have your highest possible health, and that will allow you to have your best possible life. And if you don't start by understanding that you really have to make yourself a priority, then you're not going to be able to get to that place. It's a natural evolution of feeling better. As you start to feel healthier, you're going to want to keep improving your life and your health. And I think once you learn how to put yourself first, that makes it so much easier for you to stick with the diet, because you know that it's feeding at your best health and it's forwarding your best health towards the rest of your life. And I think I put this as a bonus step. You'll find that the relationships with others improve too, because People will know exactly where they stand with you. And this doesn't have to be done in a selfish way. It's not a sign of selfishness if you're making yourself a priority. Because as I said, first of all, it allows you to better deal with the other issues and problems in your life because you're healthier, you're stronger, you have more energy, you can think more clearly, you're able to give them more of your time in a better way. But I think on a different level, it also is better for relationships because it creates a true and genuine relationship with the other people. You know, when I was in university, I remember one of my first boyfriends, and we were not a great match, but I think I was just like so amazed that somebody asked me out that I dated him because I was so thrilled that, you know, someone was interested in me. He was a lovely man. He was a really lovely, sweet, nice guy, but he wanted to be an accountant and he just didn't have whatever the head for it. And so he took the test to be an accountant 3 times and he failed 3 times. And every time we were together in his dorm room and we were studying, if we were doing something like math, I would pretend that I didn't know the answer because I didn't want him to feel bad. I didn't want him to think I was smarter than he was. And I thought I was doing him a favor. But you know what? I was smarter than he was. He should have known the real me because in the end, the person he thought he liked wasn't the real Ricky. And it wasn't a genuine interaction. So when people in your life know who you truly are, they're going to love the real you. And it allows you, like I said, to give more of yourself because you actually have more to give. So, just quickly to recap the 5 steps. We want to start by eliminating the blame and understanding that it isn't our fault that things are going this way. Once we understand the true reasons, then we're able to replace comfort foods with anti-candida diet friendly alternatives. Then we can begin to shift the relationship with food and ultimately make yourself a priority. And that is going to allow you to stay with this diet long term without cheating. And that is what you need to do if you want your body to fully heal so you can be rid of Candida once and for all. So at this point, you've seen how you can change your diet while you're still loving your food, not feeling deprived, using these 5 steps. So you know it's absolutely possible to stick with it for the long term and heal from Candida with the right support. So what I just shared are the exact 5 steps I used to change my eating habits. It moved me from eating junk food, all kinds of baked goods all the time, and frosting straight out of the can to a point where I am loving my healthy treats. I love my kale salads and my grain-free waffles for breakfast. I love my cauliflower porridge for breakfast if you've seen me on Instagram. And all of this while my Candida symptoms have faded into the background and I live my life to the fullest. I never really think about Candida. Well, obviously I'm thinking about it now, but I mean day to day, it doesn't enter my head to worry about my symptoms. It doesn't trouble me. I don't have that as a worrisome thought in my life ever anymore. I have the clarity of mind and the energy to focus on the things I really want to do, like traveling and like my new career, which I started because I left a job that I hated. It gave me the energy and to do that. I have time to spend with my dogs and my husband and my hobbies and the things that I love in life instead of constantly thinking about my symptoms. So if you are ready to let me be your coach for the next 6 months so that you too can go to that same place of ease, freedom, and comfort with your diet, then I'd love to invite you to join me in Reclaim, a 6-month group coaching experience that is built to deliver these exact same results for you. Reclaim is more than an online program, and I really want to make that clear because this is a small group experience of 6 months in duration. That's, I think, the shortest amount of time you need to make real change in your life. And I guide you through the entire process. It's a very intimate group. We work very closely together. And so unlike an online program that delivers information, maybe through videos or whatever, this is something that we are in together. We have live meetings just like this on Zoom where we're all there in person and we all work through it together. We have coaching, we have mentoring, you have a community to support you. as well as a Facebook group where there's continual ongoing support. And so I am able to work with people one-on-one within the group so that we can deal with specific challenges. We can learn new behaviors and practice them. We can, as what happened with Georgina when she was thinking about breaking her diet, I can support you through and coach you through those kind of challenges where you might feel like you don't have the energy that day or the motivation that day and you need extra support. This is an experience that allows you to learn and grow together to the point where your body is healed and you can go off and live the life that you were meant to live beyond Reclaim for the rest of your life. When you begin your transformative 6-month journey with me and a small group of other equally committed and motivated women next month, you will 3 major steps. First, we reclaim your food. You shift your relationship with food. You reclaim your health, shifting your relationship with yourself, and reclaim your life again, shifting your relationship with others. So let's look a little bit at each of these 3 in a bit more depth. Shifting your relationship with food, you're going to learn to eliminate the guilt and the self-blame around emotional eating so you can take back your power and you never have to worry about eating to drown out negative feelings again. We show you how to do that. You'll understand what really drives your cravings and slip-ups so that you will never again feel as if food controls your actions or what you eat. You have control over what you eat. You learn to incorporate proven strategies to safely eliminate cravings and binges, using food as a positive component of your life instead of as a short-term soother. Learn to feel relaxed and at ease with food and see it for what it truly is, a delicious, healing part of your life that doesn't require conflict or internal anguish. Food should be fun. Food should be delicious. It shouldn't be something that causes us to stress out. And I can say at this point in my life, that is exactly true. I love food. I still love it, but it doesn't cause me any anxiety. Find delicious and satisfying replacements when you feel stress or anxiety so you can preempt any binges that would derail your progress. Say goodbye to impulse eating when you're out with friends or family. And moving on to shifting the relationship with yourself because it's so important for long-term healing. Learn how to carve out time for yourself without guilt because your own health is important enough to make you a priority. And I'm not talking about, you hear about self-care involving bubble baths and essential oils and all that stuff, and which is great, and of course you can do that, but I'm talking about ways to find self-care within your daily routine that isn't going to cause you more stress, right? Because then it wouldn't really work. Focus on self-care activities that will give your body and mind the time and space it needs to truly heal so that you will then have even more energy and time for the others in your life. Understand what will most quickly support your healing on the diet and how to implement that to catapult your health and improve your life. So we're going to look at which kinds of self-care activities work best for you because everybody's different. Learn to give yourself the self-care, time, and forgiveness you need so that you can truly love who you are as you are. And the more you do this, the more it happens. Trust me on that one. Shift your relationship with others. So learn to set healthy boundaries without guilt that will propel your own healing and also work well for everyone else. It's so important that we have these boundaries in our lives. But again, if you're doing it in a way that alienates people or comes off as selfish, then that's not going to be effective for you. So it has to be done in a way that also works for everybody. Get the support you need to succeed, even if your friends and family aren't 100% behind your Candida diet. Because for most of us, the rest of the people in our lives are not following a Candida diet. And when you have a dedicated group of people who truly get it and are on that same path with you, that support is golden and is priceless. You'll also learn to feel easy and relaxed at social events, knowing you can truly enjoy the socializing and that no one has the power to sabotage your efforts any longer or impede your success. So you might wonder, is Reclaim a good fit for me? Well, if you're tired of stressing over symptoms and food lists, and you know that your life has more to offer you than constantly being involved with your symptoms and your supplements and your foods and your lists and your doctor appointments, then that's a good sign it's something that might be for you. If you're done with the on again, off again merry-go-round and are ready to be rid of effects of Candida once and for all, If you're ready to make the commitment to see the changes that can change your life, and you'll do what it takes because you're worth the long-term results, the commitment now, it's worth this little window of discomfort to get the results for the rest of your life. Think about 6 months versus the rest of your life. Is it worth it to you to put in the effort now? And then when it's easy and it flows, you can do that for the rest of your life. You're ready to dive in and get started, this time with all the support you need, so you know you're not in it alone. And so you're going to increase your chance of success exponentially. You're excited to try something new and different, which has already had proven results for others. You know that there's so much more to life than constantly worrying about symptoms or what foods you will or won't eat, and you're ready to finally get there. If that's you, then you are ready for Reclaim, and I really hope you will join me. So if you know this is a good fit for you and you're ready to dive in to start making those changes that are going to change everything, then please just go to rickyheller.com Reclaim. There's a very short questionnaire, just so I can learn a bit about you. And for when you submit that, I'm going to send you an email with a scheduler so we can schedule a short call just to confirm that this is a good fit for you. I want to be sure that everybody who comes into the program, that we have, because it's a group, that people will mesh well and work well together, and that it's something that is going to be of benefit to you. And so this call is just our chance for us to go over that. So I'm ready to speak to you, and I'd love to talk to you if you think this might be a good fit. Here's what you can expect on the call. Okay, we're going to spend about 30 minutes together, and we'll help you get clear on where you are now in your Candida journey, also where you're going and what is going to help you along the way. And that's going to look at the long term. And during the call, you will have a chance to decide whether Reclaim is a good fit for you. And if it's not, this is not any kind of salesy, pushy call. I absolutely will do my best to recommend something else that will work for you. And from my point of view as well, I mean, I don't want people in the group for whom it's not a good fit, because like I said, it's a group. And so we want this to work for everyone. We're going to be together for a long time, 6 months together. And I want you to feel sure that it's a good fit for you. So should you sign up for a call? Well, like I said, if you are sick and tired of symptoms that are keeping you from having the kinds of life experiences you want, if you know that there's more to life than worrying about food and whether your symptoms will stop you from spending time with your family and friends, if you want to feel easy and comfortable around food, and you just want to be naturally drawn to the healthy choices without all of that drama and self-doubt, then if you know you deserve something better for your life, I would love to see you in the program. And it's time to make that change and start improving your life for the better. So here's what you do next. Go to rickyheller.com/reclaim. After you fill out the form, you will receive a link from me to schedule a call together. Then you'll get an email with a confirmation date and time, and that's all you need to do. I will call you, or we can do a Zoom call like this at the designated time. We'll have our chat just to go over the details and make sure that this works for you, and then we get started next month. It is your time. I want you to have this life that you deserve without Candida. I called my book Living Candida Free for a reason, because I know it is possible. You can be free of it. It doesn't have to take up space in your mind. There are so many more better parts. I'm going to cry. There are so many more better parts of life that you deserve to have. And I want that for you, because I know what it's like when you don't have it. Sorry, guys. Obviously, this is close to my heart. And one of the things that I find most upsetting is knowing that people can be better and that they stay in patterns that keep them sick and keep them dealing with Candida. And it doesn't have to be that way. All right, everybody, just one more time. If you go to rickyheller.com Reclaim, that's where we can get started. And I want to thank you for coming to this replay. Thank you for sticking to the end, and I really hope to hear from you. Okay, everybody, take care.